Hey guys, this is Daniel from Cryptopolis TCG. I'm just going to go over a deck that I've recently top 8'd with multiple times now, actually. I think so far this season I've done 6 or 7 top 8s now, with my highest being 3rd and 4th, and that was due to me conceding to my opponent since at the time I did not care for the invite. So to start, it's a Grixis Transmogrify deck where your payoff is Atraxa, Grand Unifier, and she's obviously amazing because she usually just refills your hand and gives you answers for practically anything that your opponents might have to either deal with her or to do their own game plan. So to start, let's start with the 1-drops. We have 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Fatal Pushes, and 1 Duress. The reason I have the 1 Duress is because most decks are playing a lot of non-creature, non-land cards, of course. So usually you can disrupt your opponent in multiple ways rather than just having Thoughtseize and then push. Push is good, of course, against any of the aggro decks or any of the ramp decks that use elves. So that card's just very good there. And we'll talk more about Fatal Push later on and how we can trigger Revolt and how it gets a lot better than just killing some mana dorks. For the 2-drops, we have Volcanic Spite, Make Disappears, Reckoner, Bankbuster, and Go for the Throats. To start, Volcanic Spite is just a deal 3 damage to practically any target. It's very good because we can kill a lot of things, and it also allows us to kind of put cards back on the bottom of our library in case we draw Atraxa or too many lands or just a card we might not need in case we need to filter to find more stuff. Make Disappear is just generally a pretty decent counterspell, especially if you can casualty it. Only because it creates 2 copies of itself, so it becomes almost like a 4 mana or 2 mana mana link for 4 instead of just 2 regularly. 3 Bankbuster is also very good just because it allows me to refill my hand. It creates a pilot and a treasure when you remove the 3rd counter from it. So in this deck, especially with Transmogrify, you're able to Transmogrify the pilot or the Bankbuster if you can crit if you really need to. And then Go for the Throat is just generally an all-purpose good around removal spell in case I need to kill something that has more than 3 toughness, such as Shieldred and some other popular cards in Pioneer currently. There's 4 Fable the Mirror Breakers and then 2 Kaito Shizuki in the list. Fable the Mirror Breaker is just all around a very good card. It usually can 2-for-1 or even 3-for-1 your opponent in most cases, as long as you don't die beforehand. The Kaito Shizuki is also very good because it allows me to create a 1/1 blue ninja token for a Transmogrify, or allows me to smooth out my draws by either looting or drawing a card if I attack that turn. I don't believe I've ever -7 Kaito Shizuki in any competitive setting, but when you're a good rule of thumb for myself as well is that whenever I put a Planeswalker into my deck, I never consider the ultimate something that I want to revolve the Planeswalker around, since I'm generally never going to get there in the first place. For the lands, we have 4 Darksliss Thrower and 4 Blackleaf Cliffs. They're the fast lands for Grixis, which is red, black, and blue-black. They're just all around very good. Allows you to turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 1 Fatal Push, hold it, Make Disappear, etc. We have 6 of the Shocklands, 2 Steam Vents, 2 Water Graves, 2 Blood Crypts, just all around trying to get your colors, so that way you don't get mana screwed in any way. We have 3 Stormcarved Coast, 3 Shipwreck Marsh, and then 2 Haunted Ridges. The reason why there's just 1 less Haunted Ridge is only because of when it comes to how much black and how much red you have, with all the Blackleaf Cliffs, the Blood Crypts, the 1 Sokenzen, and the 1 Swamp in the deck. You have the same amount for all colors, since they're all the same quantities in terms of color fips. We have 4 Transmogrify. This is the namesake card of the deck. It's basically creativity, but instead of artifacts or creatures, you have to exile a creature. Then it only finds you a creature as well instead of an artifact. So one of the benefits of playing Transmogrify over creativity is the fact that you can play artifacts in your deck, which is why I also run Bankbuster. And that's one of the downsides to creativity as well, since you can no longer run artifacts. We have 4 Shark Typhoons, because Shark Typhoon is just all around a very good control card. It allows you to hold up a counterspell, and if they don't do anything, it allows you to cycle it to make a 1/1, which is also very good for Transmogrify, because then you can go ahead and Transmogrify the 1/1 Shark, or however big it is, when you want to. It's also very good because it enables Fatal Push, and so something that people commonly don't know is that if you cycle a Shark Typhoon for 0, where X equals 0, it actually creates a 0/0 Shark, which ends up dying, which will actually trigger Revolt for Fatal Push. So it's a neat little trick to know. So Go for the Throat is 2 mana ways to kill Shieldred. There's also another way to kill Shieldred in this deck, which would be a Shark Typhoon cycle with a Fatal Push Revolt kill. For the sideboard, we are a Gigantha deck. Gigantha is just amazing. It allows me to go ahead and pay 3 for... It's actually 8 mana total, because you pay 3 for the to put into your hand, and then 5 to cast the creature. It allows you to hardcast Atraxa if you ever draw her. Disdainful Stroke is good against mono green, good against blue-white control. Basically any deck that also likes to go over the top. Go Blank is another card that I recently added to the sideboard only because of it's good against any of the control decks and any of the slower decks, but it also provides me a way to exile graveyards, since in this deck I really don't have great ways, so it's good. I usually put it in against Greasefang or any other deck that cares about their yard. Extinction Event's just good all around board wipe. It's also very good against mono green because it exiles everything, and mono green obviously wants their things to die versus exiling. Duress is also just a very good card. I'm very high on Hand Disruption and Atraxa decks, only because of generally when I get Atraxa out, I generally want to have her out on turn 5 or 6 when I have more than 4 mana, so that way I can turn 4 Transmogrify, or not turn 4, but spend 4 mana for Transmogrify, then also have 1 or 2 mana to either hold up a counterspell or address their hand so that I take their answer to her or to whatever they were trying to do in the first place. Mystical Dispute's obviously just a very good 1 mana counter for blue decks. Change the Equation's kind of a card that I also recently added. The format's obviously very warped around Rakdos and mono green right now. Change the Equation hits both decks. This deck generally does not have a bad time against Rakdos in the first place, but it also doesn't hurt to have a card that's generally good against them and then also other decks in the format. I think currently against Rakdos, I have probably like an 80% win rate. It's very high, and then that's in a competitive setting and not in something that's just very informal. For Rending Volley, the deck's worst matchups are going to be aggro, like counterspell decks. So this deck has a hard time against spirits, especially. I do not like that matchup. I hate it, but it's something we still have to be prepared for, and it's still something that's not unwinnable. So we just have to run the 4 Rending Volleys. We just have to hope we see most of our removal against them. Mono White's also not the best matchup, although with the addition of the extra Rending Volley, because it used to run 3, this helped quite a bit. I think now overall my win rate against Mono White is probably 60%, which is still very good. So there's that as well. So overall, there's a lot of things you can do with this deck. I like to think this deck is pretty resilient in the fact that you have a ton of card draw with Fabled Mirror Breaker, Kaito Suzuki, Reckoner Bankbusters, and of course Atraxa herself with Shark Typhoons. You're generally going to have a better top end because of Atraxa and Shark Typhoons, that most decks can't really compete with you in the late game. Your Hand Disruption's on point. You have counter spells, so you have 2 different ways to interact with your opponent, so that way if they're doing something more broken than you are, or if they're just trying to do something to kill you very quickly, you usually can slow them down, if not a little bit or a lot. And of course having Gigantha is great because in case you ever run out of cards, or if you ever draw too many Atraxas without any ways to put them back into your library, Gigantha will let you hardcast her, and also provides you a target to Transmogrify, which I've done a few times as well. You can create treasure tokens from the Fable of the Mirror Breaker token, which allow you to also cast Atraxa. I've seen other lists that run Big Score, but I've found out personally that Big Score I think is just a little too slow for the deck, or for Pioneer in general, in my opinion, unless you're playing Creativity. Only because Creativity likes to win on turn 5 with Big Score. In this deck, I just don't think a 5 mana Atraxa, or a turn 5 Atraxa is going to be good enough with all the ossifications, all the Go for the Throats. You're probably just going to either get run over or you'll probably soon die. You generally need Atraxa to live at least 1 turn in most matchups in Pioneer. So this is my deck tech. I've done very well with it. Like I said, I've probably done 5 to 7 top 8s now this season. It's done very well against most meta matchups. The only deck I do not like, or the only decks I do not like to play against with this deck are honestly only Spirits now. Every other deck I think it has a good matchup against. Control decks I never have an issue because I have Hand Disruption and counter spells versus just their counter spells. And against most decks in the format, my top decks it seems like are better than theirs. So I hope you guys enjoyed my deck tech.